Alright guys, so no, I am not dead, and no, I did not quit YouTube. I just didn't really have anything to make a video about for the last little bit. But luckily, now I have this to make a video of, and this is my new Triton router. This is the Triton TRA001, and in some international markets, it's also called the TRC001. And basically what this is it's a router, which is a woodworking tool, for those of you who aren't on my channel for woodworking and stuff. It's a woodworking tool that you can basically use to like put the roundovers on edges of wood, as well as a lot of other things, but I don't want to have to try to explain everything you can do with a router. And the reason that I decided on a Triton, which is one of the more uncommon brands, is because basically of this thing right here. Now I'll show you more about this later, and rather than just try to explain it now, but it's basically because of that little piece. So I've pulled some stuff out of the packaging already, and now I'm just gonna get this last little bit of stuff out of here. And there's an instruction book in here, but I'm not going to take that out because I'm never really going to need it, so. Oh boy. Holy crap, that thing is heavier than I thought it would be. So now I'm just going to get this piece out of the bag. And this is the Triton TRA001 router. And as you can see, this router is orange, obviously, which is Triton's color. I don't know off the top of my head any other brands that use orange, but I know there is another brand. So the TRA001 is a 3¼ horsepower router, which is the highest power one that they make. And what that crank does, and what makes it so important, is when you have this mounted upside down like this in a router table, you can't access these knobs and everything to adjust this height. So what you do is there's this little notch in the space right here, and this would line up along that hole, and it goes down onto this pin right down here. So you just have to drill the hole in your router table and then just kind of get it to slot in right there, and just turn it until it slides on, and then from there you could use this knob to adjust the height. Now, in order to use it in a table, you first have to, well, okay, you need a screwdriver, but you have to take this one little screw out and twist this, take out the spring that's in there, and just put it somewhere, and then twist this back on and screw that down so you don't lose it. And then at that point, you have a router table usable router, which is the whole reason I bought this, because if you want to use a router in a router table, you'll probably want a router lift for convenience. And those things cost at least $400 for a nice one. And basically with this, with that crank, you don't even need a router lift. So by getting this router, I saved like $400 in the process. So I guess I can just say some things about this router. It is a 3¼ horsepower, which is the largest in their lineup. They also have a either 2¼ or 2½, I forget what it is, and they have a 1¾ horsepower. And this one and the 2½ or 2¼ one are the ones that have that router lift thing that you can put in the bottom, and the 1¾ one does not have that crank. Now, some things that make this router particularly cool are not only the lift, but also the different levels of adjustment that they have on here. Just because you've got all these different knobs. You've got this knob, which you can use for semi-fine depth adjustment. And then there is, of course, you can just release this, and you could have just a plunge, so you can adjust the depth that way. And then there's this little knob for absolute ultra fine, like 1/16 of an inch adjustments or something like that. So you can get really precise with this router. Also, it's a 5-speed, so you can adjust for your different bit diameters. So that your bit won't be spinning too fast or too slow for what you're cutting. Also, because it is 3¼ horsepower on this particular one, no matter what you do with it, basically you're not going to get your motor slowing down, so it's just really great that way. Also, another thing that I forgot to mention is this right here. There's a cover over the power switch, so once you plunge that down and lock it, this cover blocks the power switch completely, so you cannot turn it on by accident while you're changing your bit. So that's really neat. Now I'm just going to let this up slowly, and then you can push that out of the way and turn the router on. Now, one unfortunate thing that I didn't actually know before I got this, which will be okay, but it's just one thing I didn't know, is that when you have the switch in the on position, you cannot plunge the router all the way, which means that you cannot lock the spindle like that. So you actually have to turn the power off and let that lock before you can then plunge the router down all the way, at which point the spindle auto locks and you can change your bits with just one wrench. And then I guess I'll just go over some of the accessories that you get in the package. In the bag that the power cord was in, you have one of your chucks. This looks to be the 1/2 inch. And there's an accessory chuck for a 1/4 inch if you have any bits that use a 1/4 inch. Here's the router base, which attaches very easily to the bottom of the router. So basically just loosen those screws up enough so that they will go through, and wrong way. And then you just push up on the thing and slot it underneath right there, and same on this side. And then you can tighten these screws back down. And you now have a much larger base to stabilize the router, as well as you get this piece, which just slides into these two little tracks right here, I believe. Or just kidding, they slide onto the outsides of these right here. So you just loosen these up a little bit and slide this on. And then you have an edge guide so that if you needed to cut a rabbet, say 5 inches in or something, you could just line this up and slide it along the side. Sorry about that little break in the video there. I was looking for another piece of this router, but it turns out that it's actually right here on the bottom. And what this is you can unscrew this, and then you can put a nail right through one of these holes in the center of wherever you want to cut a circle in your board. You just put a nail in the center of where that circle should be, and then you can put this in here and just put your hardware back on. Of course, this would all be with it sitting on whatever board you're cutting a hole in. And then with a plunge bit, just a straight plunge bit, you could then take this, set it with that pin wherever you want to cut your circle, and just rotate it around that pin, and it'll cut you a perfect circle. So that's a pretty neat little add-on to this as well. So I hope I've covered everything on this. If not, then I'll probably make a follow-up video at some point. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please do click the like button, as that does help me out. Also, leave me a comment about anything that I did well at or anything that I could improve. And if you would like to see more of my videos, then please do click subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys later.